which was Pakistan. So this is one of the sort of less obvious countries that you were talking about. And Pakistan was the second destination on kind of my big journey. Came about completely randomly. So when a friend, an old school friend, heard that I was, traveling the world and telling travel stories, she said, okay, well, why don't you come over to Pakistan? I'm here. I'm living here. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, Pakistan, she's, this like tiny blonde girl with blue eyes, really sweet and gentle. And I was like, you're in Pakistan? Like, that doesn't seem like the kind of place that you would travel to. She's like, no, it's completely different from what you expect. Come over, you'll see for yourself. So I got my visa, got my ticket, and then from Nepal, I flew to Pakistan. And I was like, oh my God, where am I going? Pakistan, I've heard so much about Pakistan. Only bad things, right? You hear about these countries like, oh God, there's violence, there's terrorism. Like, you imagine things like people on the streets just have like guns with them, and there's probably not much to see. And so I was imagining all these things, repeating these sort of like media narratives that we hear in our daily lives. In my head as I was boarding the flight to Islamabad in Pakistan. And landed, and within maybe an hour, my entire perception of not just Pakistan, but the world and life, if I may exaggerate a little bit, changed just almost instantly. I landed expecting to visit some sort of war zone with very little to see. And I found a city that was lined with beautiful green trees, nice cars, nice people who were smiling at me, not carrying guns. I just realized, oh my God, maybe I was wrong about this place. And then I stayed in Pakistan for a couple of weeks, traveling to the north, which is a very beautiful mountainous region, some of the tallest mountains in the world, amazing nature, valleys, really kind people, interesting culture. And spending 2 weeks, just the sort of initial 2 weeks there, made me reconsider how I viewed the world and why I had viewed the world in those ways. Kind of having succumbed to all the like sort of negative biases and stereotypes that I had been exposed to through sort of mainstream media, and never really having questioned them before, until of course I experienced them on my own skin and the fact that they just were not true. And so my 2-week adventure with Pakistan turned into a 1-year-long stay in Pakistan. I ended up staying for a year, traveling all across the country, making videos about, sort of travel, culture, food in Pakistan. And that was the real beginning, I would say, of the journey. And that's what brought me here.
Wow. And I suppose what I loved is probably when you went out to Pakistan, as you said, the media tabloids, especially around that sort of time, were probably just full of horror stories.
Yeah.
And I imagine, your parents and friends and family were convincing you left, right, and center to abandon this idea that you had, this crazy idea.
Oh my God. I mean, the things I heard, my family and friends definitely thought I was probably a little bit mad by that point, because I had quit everything, back in London. And then next thing they know, I'm traveling to Pakistan of all places. So they definitely had some serious questions. And I'm not surprised, of course. I would probably do the same for my friends. But it was definitely an unusual decision. And the thing is that, the longer I stayed in Pakistan, the more they worried, the more passionate I became about sort of telling them and showing them just how beautiful and different it was to what maybe they were also kind of expecting and what they had been imagining. So it definitely, in very interesting ways, it was also a journey. Like, it was a journey for me in sort of creating content on sort of public platforms like YouTube and Instagram about this amazing place, but also kind of a more personal journey into trying to convince my family that not only was I making the right decision by quitting my job in London and pursuing something completely new and different and very sort of risky in a sense that there was no guarantees that I would succeed, but also then going to places like that as a solo female traveler. And I think that was something that worried them the most, but that was also the kind of niche that I was the most passionate about.
What was a sort of moment that you had there where you were like, this this is one of the best moments of my life?
Oh, where do I begin? I think, oh gosh. For example, I made a couple of unexpected friends up sort of north in the north of Pakistan in the mountains through just some common friends. I had been invited to stay in a sort of remote valley in the north, in the mountains for as long as I wanted. So I kind of drove up there without really knowing much about the region, without really knowing anyone there, and I would only get to sort of meet the family that would be hosting me when I got there. I didn't even get a chance to sort of talk to them on the phone or anything before. So I was kind of going a little bit into the unknown. And the moment they sort of, I arrived like driving down the sort of beautiful Karakoram highway, which is one of the most stunning, I think, roads in the entire world, just takes you through these gorgeous mountains. It took like a day and a half to actually reach the village that I had been invited to stay in. Reached the village, which was just, underneath this huge mountain face, overlooking the Hindu Kush and the Karakoram mountains, and entered the home of a family that was sort of native to the region, part of the Wahi community, who, have their own language, their own customs, very separate from the rest of Pakistan. And I entered their house, and there's only a couple of rooms in the house. In the main room, where most of the family members sleep, there's a buhari, which is like a sort of very basic stove. There's a fire inside. It's nice and warm. There's carpets all over the walls. There's a beautiful sort of ceiling that's carved in wood. And inside there's this family, this older lady, maybe 60 or 70 years old, with long braids, dressed in a traditional style, with a beautiful woven cap. And she's smiling at me and she's welcoming me with some bread and some milk. And then there's her husband, this elderly gentleman who's standing there with his like Pakistani pakul, this sort of traditional hat. And they're just welcoming me, this stranger, into their home. They didn't know me before. I didn't know them before. And yet here they are, standing there with a smile, not speaking a word of English, me not speaking a word of their language, and just expecting me to come in. Just come in. You're our guest. Come in. Take a bite of this bread, take a sip of this milk, and stay with us for a while. And I think this kind of like warmth and hospitality is something that I've experienced in so many places. But I think Pakistan was really the place that kind of introduced me to that concept, which I think is quite alien to us in the sort of Western world. We don't have this. I mean, for example, in Poland, where I'm from, we kind of culturally pride ourselves on being hospitable and welcoming. But it's not really, it's maybe a concept that existed once upon a time, but that I don't think no longer applies as much, and that we don't see it in practice as much. We're not as trusting of strangers anymore. Maybe at some point we were. But out there in Pakistan and so many other places that I've visited, there is definitely that sense that, oh, you're our guest. Come and share our home with us. Come and share our food with us. And that's definitely been like the most beautiful experience or set of experiences that I've collected on my travels. Is this kind of the hospitality that I've experienced has just been absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah, I think when you travel, that is the one thing you always take, is the unbelievable hospitality that you get in some of these countries, and ones that you would not expect at all. I remember, it reminds me of a sort of time when we were traveling through Turkey and we were up in Mount Ararat, which I think is famous for where Noah's Ark less rested or something along those lines. And anyway, we were driving up, I think, to camp for the night, and we came across a sort of shepherd's hut. And as we drove in, we were like, oh, shh, it's someone's place. Let's turn around. And they're like, no, come on in. This little bell tent in the middle of the mountain, the last bit on the road, no one would ever go up there. And they were like, come on in, come and have some eggs. So we sort of sat down in their tent, the stove was on, they cooked us some eggs, and and then we went on our way afterwards. And we didn't speak a word, we couldn't understand a word that they were saying, but it is this sort of hospitality and this generosity that comes back again and again and again when you travel.
And I think I find a lot of that hospitality, you experience it in some of the places that have some of the worst reputations for kind of other human beings, you know. Again, Pakistan, I think for a lot of people who don't know much about the country, the first association would be of, you know, oh, something terrible will happen to me if I go there, and not, oh, well, wait, hang on, maybe someone will welcome me into their home, you know, with bread and milk. That's kind of not what we imagine, is it? And it's really interesting, that kind of dissonance that you experience of kind of the perceived world and the world that you actually end up experiencing with your own kind of senses.